Yasya yato niviyad itaratas chate swavikya swarat.
Janmadhyasya yatam vayalitaratas chate swavikya
Tene
swarat.
brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha.
Tenne brahma hridaya adhikavaye mujanti jasuraya.
Tejo varimadam yata vinimayo yatra chisargo misha.
Tejo varimrida jata vinimayo jatra trisargo mrisya.
Dhamna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Dhamna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of
O
Vasudeva.
all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all
Of
causes.
the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
And
manifestations.
he's independent because there's no other cause behind him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It is
him.
he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
The original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire, of land seen to water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are
I
real.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who is
Krishna,
eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitruvocha,
Dharma prajita kaitavutra,
paramoni matsranam satam,
paramo nirmasharanam satam,
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
vetyam vastavam astravastu,
shivadam tapa trayon mulanam,
Shivadam tapotrayomulanam,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni krite,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
kim
Krite,
va parir ishvaraha,
Kim va Pererishvaraha,
sadyo hridi avurudyatetra,
Sadyo Rudya Varudya Titra,
krite bihi sususabhistakshanat,
Kritibhi Shushu Shubhistatkyanat,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity,
It's a beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
sukamukadam drabha sangitam,
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam,
pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam,
ahur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
mura hurasika bhuvibavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
The mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit, the desire to the Vedic
It
literatures.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shindatam swak Kata Krishna
Shrivantam Swakata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Hridyantaksto hi abhadrani
Hridyantasto hi abhadrani
Vidunati Srihitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to hear
literatures,
from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is a self-righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best-wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend.
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
He purifies the devotees who constantly engage in hearing of him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Praesha Bhadrishu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
Bhagavati Uttama-sloke
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental
As he
knowledge.
hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastumo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadayascha
cheta itaranavidam
Chaitaitaranavidan
sitvan sattve prasidati.
Stitam Sadve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
the
service,
devotee becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
the devotee becomes free from the modes of passion of ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manasa
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayati.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When all these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Granthi
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samshaya
Siyante Chasya Karmani
Jyante Chasya Karmani
Drista Evat Manishware.
Drista Evadmanishvari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the heart knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material
and
affection
enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samshram samantram,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one become can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse number 23.
22, no?
I'm sorry. No,
22.
it's 22, yeah. Yadi prayasyam ripaparamestyam
Jadi prayasyam nripaparamishtam
vaihayasanam utayad viharam
Vayasanam utayad viharam
astadipatyam guna sanivaye
Ashtadipatyam gunasannivaye
sahaiva gachan manasendriyascha.
Sahaiva chachen manasindriyascha.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. However, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments, like transference to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the eightfold perfections, travel in outer space with the Vaihayasas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away with him the materially molded mind and senses. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the upper status of the planetary systems, there are facilities thousands and thousands of times greater for material enjoyments than in the lower planetary systems. The topmost planetary systems consist of planets like Brahmaloka and Dhruvaloka, the pole star, and all of them are situated beyond Maharloka. The inhabitants of those planets are empowered with eightfold achievements of mystic perfection. They do not have to learn and practice the mystic processes of yoga perfection and achieve the power of becoming small like a particle, anima siddhi, or lighter than a soft feather, lagima siddhi. They do not have to get anything and everything from anywhere and everywhere, prapti siddhi, to become heavier than the heaviest, mahima siddhi, to act freely, even to create something wonderful or to annihilate anything at will, isitva siddhi, to control all material elements, vasitva siddhi, to possess such power as will never be frustrated in any desire, prakamya siddhi, or to assume any shape or form one may even whimsically desire, kama vasaita siddhi. All these expediencies are as common as natural gifts for the inhabitants of those higher planets. They do not require any mechanical help to travel in outer space, and they can move and travel at will from one planet to any other planet within no time. The inhabitants of the Earth cannot move even to the nearest planet except by mechanical vehicles like spacecraft, but the highly talented inhabitants of such higher planets can do everything very easily. Since a materialist is generally inquisitive to experience what is actually in such planetary systems, he wants to see everything personally. As inquisitive persons tour over the world to gain direct local experience, the less intelligent transcendentalist similarly desires to have some experience of those planets about which he has heard so many wonderful things. The yogi can, however, easily fulfill his desire by going there with the present materialistic mind and senses. The prime inclination of the materialistic mind is to lord it over the material world, and all the cities mentioned above are features of dominion or domination over the world. The devotees of the Lord are not ambitious to dominate a false and temporary phenomenon. On the contrary, a devotee wants to be dominated by the supreme predominator, the Lord. A desire to serve the Lord, the supreme predominator, is spiritual or transcendental, and one has to attain this purification of the mind and the senses to get admission into the spiritual kingdom. With the materialistic mind, one can reach the best planet in the universe, but no one can enter into the kingdom of God. Senses are called spiritually purified when they are not involved in sense gratification. Senses require engagements, and when the senses are engaged totally in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they have no chance to become contaminated by material infections. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. However, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments, like transference to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the eightfold perfections, travel in outer space with the Vaihayasas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away with him the materially molded mind and senses. So this is a continuation of the explanation of bona fide ways of realizing Krishna. And one is the mechanical way, and the other is the devotional way. So in the mechanical way, it is possible to achieve pure love of God, but it's very difficult or arduous. And there are many pitfalls on that path, many severe pitfalls, because one has to lose attraction to all these different alluring enticements, such as the yoga cities, such as great knowledge and renunciation, or such as enhanced almost incredible sense gratification. So you have the karmis, the yogis, and the siddhis, or the jnanis and the siddhis. And all three of those are actually are steps in the mechanical system to achieve perfection, but they're also impediments because of their enticements and their inebriating or intoxicating effect on people who cannot control their false ego and their false attachment to material sense gratification. Or because we have two levels of sense gratification, one in the gross body of earth, water, fire, and ether, and the second in the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So therefore, not only are we enticed in a gross way, we're enticed in a subtle way. And most people cannot resist those enticements. There are a few that may. If you say there are like 7 billion people in this world, out of 7 billion people, there might be 1 or 2 or 3 that can actually achieve full liberation by the mechanical yoga system. So that's not a good number, because it shows how most people will fail. And even if they succeed, there's still a great chance of falling down again, because if one is infected with Mayavad philosophy, they will not get a spiritual body. They'll remain a spiritual spark somewhere in the Brahma Jyoti. And as soon as there's even a slight desire for sense gratification, they fall down. Okay, so this is instructive. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna definitely says that the best way of self-realization and Krishna and developing love of Krishna is through bhakti yoga, not by the mechanical system. It's not recommended at all. And therefore, Krishna says to Arjuna, Te samgyani nitya mukta eka bhaktir visishyate priyo hi jnanino tyartham aham sacha mama priya. Of these, in other words, 4 types of people that come to Krishna, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. And Prabhupada explains in the purport of the 7th chapter, 17th verse, free from all contaminations of material desires, the distressed, the inquisitive, the penniless, and the seeker after supreme knowledge can all become pure devotees. But out of them, he who is in knowledge of the absolute truth and free from all material desires becomes a really pure devotee of the Lord. Well, yesterday I was shown by a friend of mine a book written by a sannyasi who used to be in Krishna consciousness or in movement, but for one reason or other he's separated. And it's a long book. And so my friend asked me, what do you think of this book? I said, well, I don't know. I haven't read the book. I don't really feel like reading the book. But if you want me to say something, I will. So I just randomly opened up the book. And it's a thick book like this. And I came to a random page, and I read 1 or 2 paragraphs. And I said, well, I'm not really impressed by this book. He said, why not? I said, the way he's writing, he sounds like a professor in a university. And in the little bit I read, he's trying to make a point that you cannot expect newer devotees in Krishna consciousness to give up everything material. Okay, well, that's somewhat of an understandable point. It's not debatable too much. But then he goes on to say that it's okay for someone to have material desires or needs. Let's say they're material needs that are absolutely necessary for them if they're going to continue in devotional service. And I said to him, this is not what Prabhupada is teaching, or it's not what the acharyas are teaching. Yes, they admit that people will have material needs that they're very attached to, even though they're chanting Hare Krishna and engaged in devotional service. But the Goswamis and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Prabhupada are always aiming toward pure devotional service. Therefore, they're not giving a wiggle room for people to remain attached to their mundane, so-called necessary desires. And I said, so this person is misleading people by thinking that it's okay to have these desires. So there's a purport where Prabhupada explains, and it's very interesting, 4th chapter, 31st verse. And yesterday we also read something very in the same vein, but now we go a little further. It says, Nayam lokosti ajas ayajnasya kuto nya kurusatama. So this is one of the only verses in the Bhagavad Gita that's 2 lines instead of 4 lines, right? And it says, O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, whatever form of material existence one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. The human form of life is the only loophole by which one can get out of this entanglement. The Vedas, therefore, give us a chance for escape by pointing out the paths of religion, economic comfort, regulated sense gratification, and at last, the means to get out of the miserable condition entirely. The path of religion, or the different kinds of sacrifice recommended above, automatically solves our economic problems. By performance of yajna, we can have enough food, enough milk, etc., even if there is a so-called increase of population. When the body is fully supplied, naturally the next stage is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas prescribe, therefore, sacred marriage for regulated sense gratification. Thereby, one is gradually elevated to the platform of release from material bondage, and the highest perfection of liberated life is to associate with the Supreme Lord. Perfection is achieved by performance of yajna, sacrifice, as described above. Now, if a person is not inclined to perform yajna according to the Vedas, how can he expect a happy life even in this body? And what to speak of another body on another planet? There are different grades of material comforts in different heavenly planets, and in all cases, there is immense happiness for persons engaged in different kinds of yajna. But the highest kind of happiness that a man can achieve is to be promoted to the spiritual planets by practice of Krishna consciousness. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. It's extremely important purport, because what we see here is that although it's understood that people have some minimal, let's call them minimal material desires that they're not going to let go of right away. Right? But the Goswamis and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, of course, Gaura Kishore Babaji, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, they're not leaving room for complacency with this idea that, well, you have certain needs, so you can go on and get them, and it's understood that that's going to happen. No, they're always pressing, but you must go beyond that. You must give up all material desires. Vihaya kamam yasarvam pumam charati nishpraha nirmama nirahankara sasantim sasantim. So it says that gachati, that one must give up all material desires for sense gratification, and vyakamam yasarvam pumam charati nispraha, and one must be nirmama. Nothing belongs to me, and nirahankara, and I have no false assumption that I am this body, or I have these absolute necessary bodily needs. Right? Sasantim adigachati. Such a person attains real peace. So they can go on and tolerate all kinds of difficult or happy situations without being deviated from Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, if you say, well, it's okay to do this, we understand you have these needs, and if you don't get this thing, you're not going to be happy in Krishna consciousness. That's not the point. That's not pure devotional service. The aim is pure devotional service always, and to give people some idea that, okay, you don't have to go to that level exactly, you can remain attached to certain things because it's in your mind, it's necessary for you to continue in Krishna consciousness. No, they all have to be given up ultimately, and the sooner the better. But but it's understood that Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. We've gone over this many times, but you cannot stop striving for pure devotional service. That's the point. That has to be emphasized. So yesterday we also read this purport, 5th chapter, 16th verse. Let's see what it says. 5th chapter, 16th verse says, it says, the living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience, or ignorance. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by ignorance? Does God become bewildered by ignorance? If so, then ignorance, or Satan, is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master, and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all nescience. So what is Krishna consciousness? It's giving up all desire for sense gratification. It's not placating the confused mind. Say, well, it's all right if you can continue doing certain things because you think it's a necessity. No, that's giving leeway or wiggle room so someone can become attached to, remain attached to things that are negative for spiritual life. They have to give those things up completely. So therefore it says here, even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect, bona fide, Krishna-conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Shri Krishna therefore stated in the 2nd chapter 2:12 that every living being is individual and that the Lord also is individual. They were all individuals in the past. they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night, we see everything as one in the darkness, but in day, when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality in spiritual life is real knowledge. So the goal of Krishna consciousness is to give up all sense gratification. It's not to maintain certain types of sense gratification because one deems it necessary, or one is not ready to give it up. So therefore, unless we contact a person who's always pointing toward the real goal and not giving, as we say in English, wiggle room, then we actually make progressive, slow, but progressive spiritual advancement. So this is a major point because this verse 431 claims that without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet. Well, this is explained even more in depth in Srimad Bhagvatam, 3rd canto, 12th chapter, 19th verse, where Prabhupada says, he says, by penance only can one even approach the personality of Godhead, who is within the heart of every living entity, and at the same time beyond the reach of all senses. And in the purport to this verse, 3:12:19, Prabhupada explains, he says, from this verse we can understand the absolute truth is realized in three features. Okay, there's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He said the first realization is that we come in touch with the sunshine. That is very easy. Anyone can come in light of the sunshine. It's open to everyone. Then another feature of the sunshine is the sun globe. That is not so easily available. You cannot go to the sun globe. According to the modern scientific conclusion, we can understand that the sun globe is away from us by 93 million miles. And still we cannot tolerate the temperature here. And what will be your position if you go to the sun globe? Before reaching sun globe, even by some millions of miles, we are already apart 93 million miles. And suppose that there is 3 million miles apart. So, in other words, suppose we go as close as 3 million miles from the sun. Then the temperature there is so high that we'll be finished. We'll be dead. We cannot approach the sun globe even. And what to speak of entering into the sun globe? That requires a different body. Of course, there are living entities in the sun globe, within the sun globe, and there is the predominating deity, also the president, Vivaswan. You may recall, there is a state, just like you have got here, United States. There is state also, and there is also president, and the president's name is Vivaswan. Everything is there in the Shastra. We read from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, I spoke to Vivaswan, the president or the predominating deity in the sun globe. So this is all fact. It is not fiction. You are seeing the sun globe, and you are seeing that the sunshine is coming from the sun globe. So it is a globe. Therefore, there must be inhabitants, but their body is different. Just like this earthly planet is made of earth or dirt. That is made, but the sun is made of fire. This is within these 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. So the mixture of these things are there also, but the fire element there is predominant. As here on this earth, all the mixtures are here also, but here the earthly element is prominent. So this is also one of the material worlds. So there are different varieties of planets. That is God's creation. This is also God's creation. That is also God's creation. But I cannot go there. Land is God's creation. Water is God's creation, but you cannot live in the water, and the fish cannot live on the land. Similarly, although there are millions and trillions of planets within this universe, you have to live in that particular planet where you are destined to live. That is conditioning. You cannot go to the sun planet or moon planet. Otherwise, what is the meaning of conditioned life? Conditioned life means you are given opportunity to live on this planet, or the other living entities, they have been given opportunity to live in the sun planet. So they cannot come and live here and we cannot go there and live there. This is called conditioned life. You must live under conditions. You are not free. Otherwise, they are attempting so much to go to the moon planet, but we are doubtful whether they are actually going. But no benefit has been derived from their excursions to the moon. Simply, you have spoiled your energy, time, and money. In other words, you're saying going to the moon or going to Mars or whatever, or the asteroids, it's a waste of time and money, right? Because you're conditioned that you cannot violate the conditions of the nature. So this is another law of nature. Now we have to note down that everyone is conditioned, and therefore everyone has certain conditioning that they cannot overcome in this lifetime. So if we're destined to live on the earth, you don't have to sign up on the SpaceX to make the first trip to Mars, which is a one-way trip. You never come back and you all die. It's crazy. We're not meant to live on Mars. We don't have a body that's constituted to live on Mars. So therefore, we have to make the best of the bad bargain. And that's this body that we have that's conditioned to stay on the earth. It's not conditioned to go to the moon or to Mars. And then Prabhupada said, but they are thinking that they are free. That this is the false ego of the modern scientists and so-called philosophers and so forth. They think that they are free. They can do whatever they like. That is called ignorance. So there's a famous French modern philosopher called Jean-Paul Sartre. He wrote a book. He's a materialistic existentialist, and he wrote a book saying that we are all condemned to be free. Therefore, we cannot depend on a God. There may be, it may not be God, it doesn't matter. We are all free, and we have to every moment decide what we want and strive to get it. Every moment, right? This has nothing to do with God now, right? He's eliminated God. It was that we are free. But actually, let's see what Prabhupada says. That is called ignorance, mudha, rascal. They are living under conditionment, but they are falsely thinking that we are free. Is it not? Where is that freedom? Prakrite kriyamana ni gunai karmani sarvasaha. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. This rascal civilization do not admit this. They are so fool that they are conditioned in every step, and still they are thinking they are free. This is called illusion. All right, so Prabhupada just pulled the rug under all these modern existentialists, and Jean-Paul Sartre, who I actually saw once in France. Anyway, Prabhupada continues. Therefore, to get freedom, you have to work for it. Freedom does not come so automatically. Just like you are diseased, you are under the control of fever or some other painful condition, could be corona virus, or under some disease. So you have to undergo some penance. Just like you are suffering from some boil on the body. It is very painful. Then in order to cure it, you have to undergo the surgical operation if you want to be cured. Therefore, tapasya, that is tapasya. Tapa means painful condition. Tapa, just like temperature. If you are put in high temperature, 110 degrees, then it is very intolerable for you. It is very painful. Even for us Indians, we are born in India, tropical climate. Still, when the temperature is more than 100, it becomes intolerable. And what to speak of you, meaning you Westerners. You are born in a different temperature. Similarly, we cannot tolerate lower temperature. If it is below 50 degrees, it is intolerable for us. So there are different climates, different temperatures. And in Canada, they tolerate 40 degrees less than zero. So it is a question of different condition of life. But we are conditioned. High-grade temperature, less temperature, high-grade cold, less cold. But we can be trained up to any kind of conditional life. That capacity we have got. There is a Bengali proverb, Sarire na mahasaya ya sahabe taya saya. Means, this body is, it can tolerate any condition, provided you practice it. It is not that you are under certain condition. If you are changed, it becomes so intolerable that you cannot live. No, if you practice, in other words, you can be trained to withstand all conditions. Just like nowadays, nobody is going. Formerly, they were going to the Himalaya mountain, and there is very cold. And they go there for tapasya. There is practice, method. In high scorching heat, the saintly person of sages, they will ignite fire all around them. Already there is high temperature, and still they will get fire all around and go on in meditation. This is tapasya. There are the items of tapasya. There is scorching heat, and they will arrange that. There is pinching, chilly cold, less than 100 degrees, and they will go underwater and put the body up to this and meditate. These are the items of tapasya. So for God realization, formerly people used to undergo such severe types of penances, and at the present moment we are so fallen, we cannot tolerate these four principles. That is, no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication. We are imposing some tapasya that don't indulge in these things. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling. These are the items of tapasya for advancing in Krishna consciousness. So, is it very difficult? It is not difficult. If one can practice go within the water up to the neck in chilly, pinching cold, is it more difficult to give up illicit sex and meat eating and intoxication? No. I mean, it's much more difficult to stand in freezing water and try and meditate, right? We are not advising no sex. We are advising no illicit sex. So where is the difficulty? But the age is so fallen that even these primary tapasyas you cannot execute. That is the difficulty. But if you want to realize God, as it is said here, tapassaiva, only by tapasya, only by penance, one can realize. So to equate the word penance with tapasya is, in general sense, it's true, but penance is performing let's say, inflicted pain or painful austerities because one has committed some sinful activity. And tapasya is voluntarily accepting painful activities for purification. Okay, so there's a slight difference in the meaning, but oftentimes in general usage, people use them interchangeably, tapasya and penance. The preliminary little tapasya, just like Ekadasi, that is also an item of tapasya. Actually, on the Ekadasi days, we shall not take any food, even drink water. But in our society, we are not doing so much strictly. We say, Ekadasi, you don't take food grains. Take little fruit and milk. This is tapasya. So we cannot execute this tapasya. So, we cannot execute this tapasya? He's asking a question. So if we are not prepared to undertake even this very, very easily executable tapasya, then how can we expect to go back to home, back to Godhead? No, that is not possible. Therefore, here it is said, tapasya eva, tapasa eva. Eva means certainly. You have to. Now, executing this tapasya, penances, are you loser? You are not loser. Now, anyone who will come from outside, they will see in our society, our members, boys and girls, they say bright-faced. Do they not? They see distinction. One priest in plain cloth, I was going from Los Angeles to Hawaii in an airplane. One priest, he came to me in the plane, so he asked my permission. Can I talk with you? Yes, why not? So his first question was that, I see your disciples very bright-faced. How is it? How it has been done? He's sincere. So where is the loss? In other words, he's saying it was a sincere question that the priest asked. And it's a fact that the faces of devotees are bright and happy. Right? So where is the loss? By denying all these things, sinful activities, we are not loser. We can live very simple life. We can sit down on the floor. We can lie down on the floor. We don't require much furniture, neither large amount of gorgeous dress. So tapasya is required. If we want advancement in spiritual life, we must accept some sort of tapasya. In the Kali Yuga, we cannot accept such severe type of tapasya as in the cold. We go underwater, sometimes drowning or sometimes up to this, and then meditate or chant Hare Krishna. That is not possible. The minimum. So tapasya must be there. So that's extremely important point. And see how much the lecture goes on. He's emphasizing it over and over again, that we must accept at least this minimal tapasya, no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication. So to say that certain people in Krishna consciousness may have absolute material needs, and for them to continue in Krishna consciousness, it's not a good message. It's not a good. This is the message, right? This is what Prabhupada says. So we have to be careful of people who give their own personal spin to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so then also, why are we here in the first place? So, what's his name? Janavatsal Prabhu asked me a question once. He said, is it really true that we fell down from the spiritual world because we became attracted to sex in the material world? And so let's hear what Prabhupada says about that. So he quotes the verse, Krishna Bulya Se Jiva Anadi Bahir Mukha Ateva Mayatare Deha Samsara Dukas Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 117, verse 117. And it says, forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy, Maya, gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. So then Prabhupada says, when the living entity forgets his constitutional position as an eternal servant of Krishna, he is immediately entrapped by the illusory external energy. The living entity is originally part and parcel of Krishna, and is therefore the superior energy of Krishna. He is endowed with inconceivable minute energy that works inconceivably within the body. Yeah, your digestion, how you make blood and plasma, how you make bone marrow, and how you make bones, and how all these things are happening in the body. Your body is making pus sometimes, it's making wax, it's, as we said, makes blood, makes plasma, but the body can repair sometimes ligaments and tendons and bone and sometimes parts of the liver, and it can stop bleeding, and it produces stool and urine, which are chemicals. It's chemical transformation of glucose into these different substances, and so there's miraculous things happening in the body. We don't know how it's happening, and it's maintaining this body, right? So therefore, the living entity is called the marginal energy because by nature he is spiritual, but by forgetfulness he's situated in the material energy. Thus he has the power to live either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. And for this reason he's called marginal energy. Being in the marginal position, he is sometimes attracted by the external illusory energy, and this is the beginning of his material life. When he enters the material energy, he is subjected to the threefold time measurement. So this is another law of nature. As soon as we come to the material world, we become subjected to past, present, and future. That does not exist in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there's the eternal present. And people notice that the activities in the spiritual world don't come to an end. They're very mysteriously sustained. Whereas here, we're subject to past, present, and future all the time. And it's disturbing, because we can remember when we were young and we were having a nice sense gratification, and then now we're old and the sense gratification is not there anymore. Or even if we try for it, it's not the same, because the body cannot do the same thing when at 60 or 80 that we were doing at 20 or 16 or whatever. So therefore, past, present, and future belong only to the material world. They do not exist in the spiritual world. The living entity is eternal, and he existed before the creation of this material world. Unfortunately, he has forgotten this relationship with Krishna. The living entity's forgetfulness is described in here as anadi, which indicates that he has existed since time immemorial. One should understand that due to his desire to enjoy himself in competition with Krishna, the living entity comes into the material existence. So this competition with Krishna, it's based on envy. and we become attracted to becoming a exploiter of the material energy that belongs to Krishna. That puts us in the position of a thief, of a person who's envious of Krishna and is trying to take away from Krishna what belongs to him. Okay. So in the material condition, the living entity is sometimes raised to higher planetary systems and material prosperity, and sometimes drowned in a hellish situation. His state is exactly like that of a criminal who the king punishes by submerging in water and then raising him again from the water. So that's called the dunking stool. That was a type of punishment in the United States earlier, where a person that was accused of a crime, they would put him on some type of contraption where they could lower him into a river under the surface, and hold him there for a certain period of time, and then bring him up, and then they would be screaming for air, right? And then when they catch their breath again, then they put them into the water. And there's another technique called waterboarding, which is the same type of idea, except there's no river, but there's the impression that one is under a river. And it's very, very stressful for a person. They can't stand it because they're on the verge of dying, and then they come up and they're gasping for air, and as soon as they're beginning to breathe normally, again they go down again. So this going up to the heavenly planets and then coming down to hell again is unbearable, but that's what's happening to all of us. So, but the real position of living entity is to be always free from the contamination of the material world. So the only reason we're suffering like this in the material world, sometimes happiness, sometimes extreme distress, is because of false attachment that started from our enviousness of Krishna, and the strongest attachment is sex. This is what people consider the highest pleasure in the material world, or most people. So one who is not materially infected and who does not forget Krishna as his master is called Nitya Mukta, eternally liberated. In other words, one who is eternally liberated from material contamination is called Nitya Mukta. So to give a person an opportunity to maintain material attachment is the wrong message. The right message is that one should become completely free of all material contamination. And there's a process for that. It's called strictly following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, which are 8. 4 things we should not do and 4 things we should do. So any let's say, mitigating factor by which we can continue some foible, such as, I can give up everything else, but I can't give up eating meat. Or I can give up everything else, but I can't give up having sex. Or I can give up everything, but I can't give up gambling. So any one of those things that is engaged in will lead to the others. and that's a fact. So therefore, we have to be determined to follow our vows of initiation. What is the vow of initiation? What is the vow of initiation?
To follow the 4 regulative principles.
Yeah.
No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit relationships.
Yeah.
And then 4 rules.
Yeah. Chant Hare Krishna, hear Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagvatam, eat prasadam, and come to the temple regularly, right? And do devotional service. So we see that's what we promise at initiation. And after initiation, for someone to say, well, if you have certain needs, it's okay, you know. No, that's not the message. That is not the message to be given to people. So here it says, from time immemorial, the Nitya Mukta living entity has always been a devotee of Krishna, and his only attempt has been to serve Krishna. Thus, he never forgets his eternal servitorship to Krishna. Any living entity who forgets his eternal relationship with Krishna is under the sway of the material condition. Bereft of the Lord's transcendental loving service, he is subjected to the reactions of fruitive activity. When he is elevated to the higher planetary systems due to worldly pious activities, he considers himself well situated. But when he is subjected to punishment, he thinks himself improperly situated. Thus, material nature awards and punishes the living entity. When the living entity is materially opulent, material nature is rewarding him. When he's materially embarrassed, material nature is punishing him. So we see both conditions are illusory when one is rewarded materially and when one is punished materially. Therefore, the devotee voluntarily accepts tapasya. And what is a tapasya? It's not that severe. It's simply giving up these 4 pillars of sinful life, right? And engaging in the 4 positive principles of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so what we're talking about today is the absolute necessity of tapasya and penance for a devotee. There's no way we can make spiritual advancement unless we do this. And to attain anything in the material world, you have to do tapasya. Like if you want, like a friend of mine was telling me that his team leader told him, oh, we didn't know this, we only found out today, but we have an absolute deadline that we can't miss 2 weeks from now. And I'm giving you the responsibility to do it. He said, well, we thought that we had 6 months to do this. He said, I know, but it was a mistake. We were all in illusion. We only have 2 weeks, and you must do it. So he worked almost 24 hours a day for 2 weeks to give the deliverable. That's called tapasya, right? Less eating, less sleeping, no sense gratification at all, just focusing on the deliverable, right? So you have to do this anyway in material life, but for sense gratification. So why can't we do it in spiritual life for serving Krishna? See, it's just a question of training, that's all. It's just a question of training and associating with proper devotees. Okay. So we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? That was Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, 117, 118. 117, 118. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 20. It goes on. I mean, I don't want to continue, but maybe we'll continue it tomorrow. You see, this is what Prabhupada is teaching. He's teaching the highest thing, because that's what Lord Chaitanya was teaching. That's what all the acharyas are teaching. The highest thing, not some intermediary thing where you have a comfort zone. We have to accept tapasya and penance. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it was Lord Chaitanya who sort of softened up the rules about Ekadasi. But normally, you're not supposed to eat or drink on Ekadasi. So he brought it down a little bit, no grains. And then Prabhupada's giving a hint here, just fruit and milk. So